I thought I'd try and make a video that's like a bit of a "Who am I" kind of thing. Bit of a weird one. It feels a bit weird, but we'll give it our best shot. I feel the reason to do this was I was chatting to somebody in the comments, and we were just talking about how like discourse doesn't happen a lot of the time in some of these platforms. So and just become apparent like how many of us might share some similar backgrounds, but also how different they might be, right? And it's interesting to learn. Like I've found recently, quite a few people come from kind of a punk hardcore background, and I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm from a punk hardcore background, but it's certainly in there. So I thought it'd be interesting just to kind of do kind of a back at the beginning, going forward, like music, like the things I think the main things I want to focus on is music, work, money, and 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 kind of like where I lived. I feel like these are like family, kind of that sort of thing, the era that I was kind of around in, because I think this speaks volumes to this. I think personally, like this is in the music often, right? You get this with lots of different genres that are born out of like the environment, the culture, the political and economical situation, right? So so yeah, so I'm 45 currently. I'm going to be 46 this summer. Which is not long. I found sound as a 10-year-old boy. There was like an electronic organ in our house that was going to be thrown away. It's like a job my dad used to do. And this organ, while in the garage going to be binned, I basically started playing around with it. And there was a local taxi rank service that used a thing called CB radios, which you might have heard of, are just like radios, but they used to use a device called a burner, which basically pumped the signal of the radio beyond the sort of legal allowance. So the reason there was a restriction is because it used to interfere with people's radios, used to interfere with the TV. Like it wasn't digital TV back then, so we're talking like what would it be, like 88-ish as a 10-year-old. And so this taxi went past and all these words started coming out of this big electronic organ. So we're talking like a massive big electronic organ, 2-layer keyboards, pedals, the whole thing, like made of a scary amount of microchips. Well, not really microchips, but like resistors and capacitors and all this kind of stuff. You don't want this thing blowing up while you're looking at it. Probably shouldn't have took the back off as a kid. But yeah, so like hearing an organ that essentially was making like flute sounds and oboe sounds and organ sounds talking to me was like, holy shit, like this is something else. So I'd already been playing around with playing melodies and chords from this I think it was like a Ted Baker music book from memory, like think Jingle Bells and Silent Night, that kind of thing. And so the fact that this created these abstract sounds, it scared the shit out of me as a sort of 10-year-old. Yeah, I was hooked. So this kind of progressed. I started kind of programming stuff into my brother's Amiga. So there was a Commodore Amiga 500 knocking around at that time. So like trying to use software like MusicX, and I basically sort of worked for my dad's garage. He was a mechanic for the summer, managed to get a basic keyboard, a Yamaha PSS 480, which had MIDI, and then so I could program this thing. I've still got the recordings actually, so maybe I'll play them one day. Think Jean-Michel Jarre meets BBC Casualty and the Pet Shop Boys. It's pretty weird. And some crazy rhythms. So anyway, I did that. Basically, started to get into electronic music a bit more in later days. Had my neighbor a few doors down, who was a lot older than me. He was my older brother's age. He basically had access to like serious synthesizers. So like we're talking like 101s and this kind of stuff, back when stuff was like cheap and being thrown away and all this kind of stuff. So like we're talking like SH101s for like 50 quid, So going into his sort of bedroom, seeing all these synthesizers become apparent, like the experience was seeing the tracks that I liked or the style of music that I like, but coming from individual boxes. And so hearing those sounds, but seeing the machinery that does them, and him being able to kind of turn stuff on and off and being able to manipulate the music I was listening to right there and then, which was just like, just absolutely incredible experience. So, my brother was sort of tampering around with synthesizers and stuff, but nothing too crazy. I was like fully in. So I didn't have the money. Like, we weren't a wealthy family by any means. Like, just my dad was a mechanic, saved up his money, nothing crazy. Kind of basically had to like try and do a paper round and just try to scrape some money together to get some stuff. And my friend down a few neighbors down, he would like source things. Hey, there's this 606 drum machine available for 30 quid. You should get one of those. So like the information of what to buy was really like just non-existent, As I got into my teens, I had built a few bits of synthesizers. So, had like a 101, a Juno 60, and a 606, which, right, by today's standards, obviously you're like, holy shit, that's like thousands of pounds worth of equipment. But it wasn't then. The 101 was 125 quid. The Juno 60 was, I think it was like 150, and I got another synthesizer given to me with it that was kind of broken, and the 606 was 30 quid. And I had a little mixer that had a record player on top. I think it was something like an Amstrad G7000 or something. It was like it's terrible. I had paper instead of having color behind the sliders, it had colored paper that used to crinkle up. It was ridiculous. But anyway, that's kind of what I used to do the early stuff on. So done a lot of the early kind of acid stuff. I borrowed my friend's 303, which he bought for like 60 quid. So kind of had access to these things a little bit like young. So I was kind of early teens. Started recording things, got a few other bits of equipment for like, people were talking like sub 100 or just over £100. And then, just really got into electronic music big time. Followed like the rave culture, but I wasn't really into rave music so much, but like the intersection of all these genres like were really fascinating. So you'd have like, techno, what would become more obviously techno, more obviously hardcore, more obviously drum and bass or jungle at the time, and just kind of this melting pot of different cultures, different sounds. Really, really fascinated. And then, I was massively into craft work at a really young age, had access to Yellow Magic Orchestra at a young age. So all this kind of stuff, partly through an older brother, partly through, access to these magazines, Sound on Sound, Future Music a bit later, this kind of stuff. I started recording my own music probably, I was probably like 15, I guess, and just on a cassette tape. Didn't really have the money to buy a cassette tape, so I'd use old cassette tapes that were in the glove boxes from scrap cars at my dad's garage. So he'd bring home like, bags full of like, well, not bags full, but like a handful of like tapes that were just left behind, So I'd use one of those. And then, or I'd steal some from my brother normally. And then once you finish one side, I just turn it over and record on the next side. So for me, like recording wasn't really like the idea of releasing it or being anything. I don't know, anything. Like just because someone said to me, why don't you record it? And I was like, I guess I should. So I just used to start listening back to some of the stuff I recorded, and it just sounded absolute garbage because the sound of this equipment in the moment through speakers versus the really bad quality tape I'd recorded it onto just sounded so demoralizing. Put all this effort into a song and it just sounded rubbish. So I was kind of reluctant to record stuff. And that sort of progressed into like my late teens. I had a relative pass away, and I come into a little bit of money that was going to be like nearly £100,000 for like an 18-year-old. But long story short, lots of people got involved, houses got damaged, families broke up, and my family, that is, my parents got divorced, and essentially that turned into, I think, just under 10 grand, which is ridiculous amount of money for a teenager, for me anyway. I've never had that much money except one other time where I've worked my ass off in my 30s to kind of save up some money. So I'm not, I just don't have money normally. So yeah, I managed to buy some like equipment, like brand new, like I bought a Mackie mixer and these kind of things that you can pick up for a couple £100 now, and just built a little mini studio. Nothing too crazy though. You might think 10 grand will buy you a lot, but I actually had to pay to decorate my own bedroom because my father didn't have any money. He lost his business. he was getting reported. We were trying to make money on the side of the road. Our kitchen didn't have a ceiling for like the whole time we lived there. It's kind of just we would sometimes just not have any food, right? Like just beans on bread kind of thing. So it was kind of weird because you'd have obviously like an inheritance that allowed me to buy a sampler, a mixer, some speakers, and a few effects units, right? And a DAT recorder. That was it. That was, I think an old secondhand JX3P that was like £200. The rest of it just went into like buying a bed and buying paint and buying a floorboard, this kind of stuff. So, but it was amazing. Like undoubtedly, it was like, this is incredible to be able to kind of have access to like some equipment and start making things. And I think around this time we would have been like mid-90s, so things were starting to get a bit more expensive. 303s were £300. 101s were like 250 or something. So yeah, stuff was getting a bit more expensive. 303s would go to 500 sometimes. You'd be like, what? This is nuts. I never owned a 303 for many years because I wasn't really into them. So started recording stuff more regularly because I had a DAT recorder, massively into Warp Records, the early Autechre sound. Aphex Twin was a big influence. And kind of like all the early sort of techno sort of stuff that was emerging was kind of, that was in the background. But I was always making kind of weird stuff. So for me, trying to find a sound that seemed to be represented somewhere was really difficult. And I'm based out of London now, but I lived in a small seaside town in Swanage in Dorset. So like, I was the kid doing electronic music. There was no one else, or at least I didn't know anybody else. So it was really kind of weird. You'd play music to friends, and if it wasn't like their track that they'd heard, on some CD or something, it just sounded weird. So it was quite difficult to know what was good and what wasn't, and why mine sounded so different to the stuff that like I was listening to. But I really enjoyed it. So I just love sound. I still love sound. It's just fucking amazing. I just can't get enough of it. So like I did that, and then I got into sort of my 20s, and like essentially I got kicked out of house because it got sold, and like another long story short, but families weren't getting along particularly well. So I had to move out and find somewhere, not long had left sort of school, I guess. Basically was a cleaner for a while, and then become a postman. So I was a postman for like nearly 10 years, and just was fucking knackered. If any of you out there are postmen, like they do early hours, like 6 days a week. Like it just sucks. You just don't have any. Your brain is really alive. So I'm really creative and I want to do something, but I just get back home and I just fall asleep. It's horrible. So I really struggled with a long time trying to do stuff and be creative, but still managed to do stuff. Managed to put on a little music event in my local town, despite the council being complete pricks about it. Try to build a bit of a community in the town. So there was a new generation coming that were into hip hop and different sorts of music. We had a little independent record shop open up, which I moved in above. So kind of just try to get myself involved as much as possible in what little was available. Got heavily into 90s hip hop and picked up turntablism. So I was scratching a lot, would DJ at some parties occasionally. Never really a big fan of being a DJ, but I was always someone who made music. But hip hop and scratching is pretty creative. So but then got to my late 20s, sick to death of my town and how restrictive it was. So wanted to venture out to London. Couldn't get to London, but I met someone along the way who was based out of Winchester, which is kind of like a really idyllic, posh as fuck place. The halfway between where I was and where I wanted to go. So I ended up going there, put myself homeless to do it. So I was basically delivering post and then decorating a house that was empty, sleeping on a mattress to just kind of have somewhere to live for a while. Put all my stuff in storage. Massive gamble just to get out of town, just to get out of home. And then basically got myself a little bit more settled in Winchester, but didn't really like it there. And then, some sound art courses and sonic art courses sort of opened up. So this was around the time where the Tate Modern, which is a UK big sort of commercial gallery, public gallery, sort of started doing sound art for the main. I think the Turner Prize, someone who done sound art won it. So therefore, I forget who the artist was. But yeah, she won it, and therefore, become a very popular thing, which was great. So I managed to get into a university, which is great because I did really shit at school because, school in the 80s and 90s is hideous. So yeah, I basically went in with almost no qualifications. The guy who took me in took my CV, or I don't know what you would call it, my CV, my sort of grades, and just threw the piece of paper behind him and just asked me to talk about sound, which for me is like, well, I can do this all day. So I got in, done a year at Middlesex University, which was just incredible to have. And I was just approaching 30 at that point, to have the time to do something I'd been struggling to do for what was already 20 years. It was just amazing. Absolutely incredible. We did set up a record label actually a few years prior to that, called Dirty Demos. I didn't come up with the name. I didn't come up with the logo either, but I did pay for it. But yeah, that was kind of like, Dirty Demos was the idea of trying to find people that were like at the early stages of their creativity that might felt pressure to create something that was like supposed to be professional. And there's that really cool sweet spot, I think, where sound is like innocent and you haven't picked up all that baggage and it's just people creating. And that we kind of like really dirty, rough, raw sound, kind of like demo quality. And that was kind of the idea. But yeah, I had to kind of pull out from that, and my friend Adam, who was running it with me, continued on for a little bit more. So if you look up Dirty Demos online on Discogs, most of the releases, bar the first one, is really Adam's work. I just helped fund and coordinate and get it going, got the websites and stuff. I got it started with them, but Adam did most of the work after that point. But yeah, university, then 1 year at Middlesex, and then I just wasn't happy with the course. So I went from not even feeling I could have a degree or qualifications, which was not something the people had in my family. We were just like, go get a job, boy. You need to pay rent. I just have to start paying my old dear's rent straight away. Going to university was amazing. And then within that year, I'm like, this university's not good enough. They were going through some difficult times, I think, at that point. So I transferred to LCC, which was different and artistic, and that for me at that point was something I didn't have the skills in. So I felt thankful for that, and the conceptual thinking and all that kind of side of stuff was incredible. They turned out to be a nightmare on the last few weeks with the degree show, but I won't go into that. It was fine, it is what it is. Just like life, and shit happens. But did well, got a good mark, and then left university. And then worked on a street trying to fucking hassle members of public to sign up for some bullshit charity I didn't want to do for a couple of weeks. And then I tried to do web design because people were asking me, because I made the label website for the Dirty Demos thing. People were saying, "Oh, you can do websites." So I was like, "Yeah, but I want to do music." So ended up just like building someone's website who was a guitarist based out of Winchester. And we needed to pay the rent. Like this point, I'd moved in with my now partner, wife actually, which is another long story. So just there was enough enthusiasm to help people realize their visions that I really liked, and because I relate to how difficult that is. But yeah, I did web work from like sort of early 30s through to late 30s, 40s, and doing music on the side. Set up the label that we run now collectively. Did a project with Lucia, who I got married to. The Mimosa Moist project, and we released on Dragon's Eye Records, which is like a really cool, minimal kind of ambient electronic label based out of LA, run by Jan Novak, which is great stuff. We got to play at a few different places around the world. Nothing too crazy, like nothing that would like pay any bills. Hardly anybody knows of us. Kind of the way I like it, really. And then after that, it was a case of like wanting to do my solo stuff again, and then the label kind of kicked in, doing some projects, and then I guess like at that point, Lucia started doing her own stuff as well, which I highly recommend checking out. It's so noisy and aggressive, and she's in the background now actually preparing, so she probably shouldn't yell too much. She's got a live performance tomorrow. But like just met loads of really cool people making really abstract, aggressive electronic music and kind of glitchy stuff, and just kind of felt that, just the evolution. And we're now in our 11th year, so still nothing's paying the bills like if you thought it was. Like all the equipment behind me, I had a job for a council that's a wealthy council, and by some fucking miracle they started paying me reasonably well. So I had to save up some money because I knew it wasn't going to last, and just put it into the studio as much as possible. So I don't really drink, I don't smoke, I don't go out very much. I basically, music's what I do. So and try to buy stuff as cheap as possible if I can. So this is all built up over like loads of years. A lot of this stuff I actually had to buy back from foolishly selling it before, but you know how it goes. So like it's been like now I guess like 35 years of making electronic music, and I still feel like I'm shit at it. I still have lots to learn. I'm still trying to make it decent, but I feel pretty chilled about it now, so it's not really a big hassle. And if people don't like it, I just don't care. I just don't care. It is what it is. People can't like what they don't like. It's fine. But yeah, like that just means like I feel like at this point now, like with YouTube, which is kind of very surreal for me, just I think really off the back of doing the job I do now, which is working at Point Blank Music School in London. So speaking with students and realizing, holy shit, like I obviously know some stuff because I've been doing this all my life, and then getting a bit of money from them. It's not, they don't pay crazy, but it certainly ain't enough to pay the fucking rent in London, I can tell you that. But I'm just not worrying about it. Like we're struggling our way through and having fun. I feel way happier than I have ever done working for local authority. Incidentally, how are we doing for time? 22 minutes. I don't want to make this too long. There was two really good things that emerged out of working for the government. I fucking hate the government, just to put it out there, and I always have done, but not wanting to be political. So I've always gravitated towards like, any artist that kind of, or any movement, like the whole rave scene, the underground movement, the criminal justice bill, Public Enemy, anything that's like the punk scenes, just anything that's kind of like skateboarding. I was a skateboarder for quite a while. So you've always got this sort of rub with authority and rub with, and I know it's different for different countries, but in the UK, like it's, I mean, if you've ever seen This Is England, like it's pretty accurate. Like in the 80s, they're just running around with truncheons. And now they're running around with fluffy hats, and now they're armies, I guess. But it's working for local authority, and I should say working in a small department within the local authority where I met a fellow anarchist. I met some pretty radical people in there. It's like a covert team trying to really change the system a little bit. Full of lots of dreams, but not many realized, to be fair. That really, that allowed me to find anarchism, which I think I was always scared of. Allow me to be openly anti-capitalist, which I don't think many people are pro-capitalist really, unless they're wealthy. And just kind of trying to navigate through life in a way that's not, not a negative sort of, I think my apprehension of anything like that was like, oh, I'm not going to start wearing balaclavas and throwing Molotovs. Maybe if we have to, but people are out there, right? But just like trying to find a way to like positively change the narrative around what is always like the same old fucking shit. People just feeling like they've got no, or some people don't have choices, right? But like for those of us who can at least have an intent behind their actions, even if they're compromised by policies and laws and all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely some good resources out there, but I don't want to go in too much into anarchism because I don't want to be that person that's preaching anything. But highly recommend checking it out because it's definitely changes your mind on how you can perceive things, and I just feel a lot happier, right? And I can concentrate on stuff and not like ignore it. So yeah, that definitely goes into the music, like the energy and that upbringing, the sort of basically being in poverty a lot of the time and kind of always just bouncing along financially, lots of like struggles in life as we all have them, and just trying to keep true to what's important, and just I think music's for me just incredible. Like it's just like it's the catalyst that just deals with the bullshit. You can put on a good track, and if people like it, it doesn't matter. They're just into it. I think sounds amazing like that. I'm going to leave it there. That's pretty much the quickest version of my story I can bring up. I don't know if that's interesting to listen to, but there it is. So I will catch you in the next one. Cheers.